Bradshaw is looking for his first ever national championship. Jeff Stanton of Team Honda already has recorded 4.
Based on last year, who do you think is going to be up front with you today?
Hopefully nobody. But Damon's riding well, John Michelle, Jeff Ward, very good.
The race all year long got underway at Gatorback Raceway. We're going to pick up the action in Moto number 2. In the opening moto, it was Jean-Michel Bayle taking the win. Jeff Stanton finished in the number 2 position. Then came Jeff Ward in 3rd. 4th place went to Damon Bradshaw. Those are the riders we looked at the outset. The gate has been dropped. Moto number 2 is underway in the 250cc class. Leading the pack, just like he did in Moto number 1, is rider number 8, Jean-Michel Bayle, followed by Jeff Stanton. Then comes Jeff Ward. Rider number 7 is Jeff Matasevich. This track at Gatorback Raceway has long been a favorite of the touring pro riders. It's full of sand, it's full of hardback. There are some rocks sticking up on the back section. There are up and down elevation changes, left turns, right turns, and in general it's a very technical and rough motocross track. In the opening moto, Jean-Michel Bayle took the hole shot. Jeff Stanton put the pressure on Bayle but was not able to make the pass. Gradually, Bayle pulled away, Stanton settling for the number 2 position. In Moto number 2, Stanton was having no part of the Moto number 1 sit back and take second syndrome. He followed and put the pressure on Jean-Michel Bayle right from the drop of the gate. This is the low portion of the racetrack. From here, the riders will take a right-hander. They'll head uphill to the finish line jump. You can see the sand is very soft, very deep, and it is treacherous riding. Jeff Stanton, a good line out of that pit, continually gained on Jean-Michel Bayle throughout the second moto. Eventually, Stanton made the pass to take over the number 1 position from his teammate, Jean-Michel Bayle. So Jeff Stanton now at the midway point of the moto leads Bayle, who is running in the number 2 position. Bayle comes storming right back with an inside line, an incredible charge and ride on the part of the Frenchman. But to no avail, Jeff Stanton on the outside portion of the racetrack had the drive at that point. He grabbed a big handful of throttle and regained, or held on, I should say, to the number 1 position. Bayle was not going to go away throughout the moto. He kept the pressure on Stanton, sometimes putting a wheel on the inside, even the outside, to let Stanton know he was there. Stanton could not afford to relax, not one little bet. Had he done so, the pass would have been made. At the outset of the 1991 season, Jean-Michel Bayle, the 2-time world champ, made his intentions clear. His number 1 priority was the Supercross title. Number 2, he was going after whatever wins, whatever titles he might collect in the Outdoor National Championship Series. Up and over the top again of that big, long, driving finish line jump in the soft sand. Jeff Ward, meanwhile, circulating in the number 3 position, just as he had in Moto number 1, was looking calm, cool, and collected. Appeared to be running very, very well at that point in the race. He was not gaining on the leaders, but again, he was not dropping that far off the pace. He was always there and in position should something happen to the leaders, and he could have been a challenger or contender for that number 1 position. Again, up and over the top of that finish line jump, and here is what happened to Jeff Ward. From this spot, Jeff Ward picked himself up and would ultimately finish in the number 8 position in Moto number 2. Here's a replay of what Stanton and Bayle were doing off that finish line jump. Now, nearest the camera is Jean-Michel Bayle, and you can see Stanton with that incredible drive. He gained about 4 bike lengths every time they mounted a charge up the finish line hill to take over that number 1 spot. That's where he did the actual passing and ground gaining while he was back in that number 2 position. From that point on, it was a matter of hold on, grit your teeth, and take everything that the rough Gatorback track could throw your way. Stanton did it admirably to take the win in Moto number 2. Looking at action now on the final lap. The lap riders moving out of the way. They want no part of the charge being put on by Stanton and Bayle. Around the soft sand one more time today. And Gatorback will go into the record books. The checkered flag. And round number 1 of the AMA 250cc National Championship Series is over. Here's a look at the way they finished in the second moto. It was Jeff Stanton coming out on top, followed by Bayle, Damon Bradshaw. Matasevich finished 4th, and the top privateer was John Dowd. Bragging rights for overall honors of the day went to Jeff Stanton. He finished in the number 1 position. The tiebreaker was his win in Moto number 2. Then came Bayle, Bradshaw, Jeff Ward, finishing in a number 5 position, John Dowd, the privateer. From Florida to Sunshine State, round 2 was in Sacramento, California, and at least for this particular date, it was nothing but a rainy state. The rain started falling a couple of days prior to the 250cc National Championship event, was still falling the day of the event. Here's a look at the point standings coming out of round number 1. Bale and Stanton tied with 47. The two of them would contest for this title all season long. Here's a look at the racetrack. Now, this is during the practice session. When this was over, the AMA rerouted a portion of the track to get rid of some of the mud, and more than the mud, they got rid of some of the water that was flowing, and it was flowing at such a rate of speed that it would actually sweep the motorcycle out from underneath the riders. 125s and 250cc's all day long had their share of problems. Good number of the riders wanted to call it a day and say, let's go on with our business and maybe race on Monday or skip this round altogether. The AMA decided, though, that they would race and they would have just one moto in lieu of the two. So only points being paid in one moto, and the moto would decide the overall winner for the day. It was still raining when the gate was dropped for the start of that points-paying and cash-paying moto. The 250 field of riders head toward corner number 1, the deep water and the mud of the Prairie City Off-Road Highway Vehicle Park. Blasting to the front, rider number 7, Team Kawasaki's Jeff Matasevich. Jean-Michel Bale tucked in behind Matasevich to take over the number 2 position. Let's watch some of the water-filled, mud-spraying action from Sacramento, California. The 250cc National Championship Series would consist of 7 races. The riders that do the best most consistently throughout the season are usually the riders that finish on top. The key is obviously consistency. A rider needs to score points in every moto possible. Still on the first lap at Sacramento, Matasevich Bale, then comes Larry Brooks, John Dowd, rider number 35, rider number 6, the Suzuki of Mike LaRocco. Number 11 was Damon Bradshaw, then came Jeff Ward. Missing, and he was well outside the top 10, Jeff Stanton. All of the favorites, all of the riders that are involved in the 250cc National Championship would be affected by this single day of racing. Damon Bradshaw was the first to feel the brunt of the water and the mud. He was out. Bradshaw was joined by Jeff Ward in the deepest part of the track. Jeff Stanton, rider number 1, meanwhile moving gradually through the pack from a terrible start. Bale had taken over the number 1 position. He was putting distance between himself and the rest of the pack. The European came to race, and race he did. In anticipation of the scorekeepers having trouble finding the numbers on the motorcycle, Bale had erected a little tent on top of his helmet. His number was printed on the tent, but more importantly, it was an identification mark for the scorers to use. Watch the middle portion of your screen. That's Mike LaRocco. The raging current took his bike out from underneath him. LaRocco was quick to react, holding the bike upright. It never fell into the water. He was able to continue. Rider number 7, Jeff Matasevich, makes the pass, and he too puts one more lap in the book. Jean-Michel Bale, meanwhile, was slowing the pace ever so slightly. He was being very cautious to ensure, as much as he possibly could, a finish. Look at that lineup. Jeff Ward, Jeff Stanton, there's Jeff Matasevich. 3 factory riders that are going to call it a day in the same mud hole. Meanwhile, toward the end of the moto, John Dowd, rider number 35, the privateer that finished in 5th place in the opening round of the season, was beginning to close on Jean-Michel Bale. With just a couple of laps remaining, Dowd had the Frenchman in his sights. He went to the outside as Bale momentarily stalled his motorcycle, and Dowd made the pass to take over the number 1 position. From that point, it was a matter of holding on and keeping it upright. Dowd, an experienced mud rider from back east, had no problem doing both. The Chicopee, Massachusetts rider on his pro circuit Honda would take the checkered flag, earning not only top privateer honors for the day, as he had 1 week earlier, but overall honors as well. For Jean-Michel Bale, the factory ace from France and 2-time world champion, it was a matter of survival. All Bale had in his mind was to finish, gain maximum points, and take over the #1 position in the 250cc National Championship standings. The checkered flag was out. Jean-Michel Bale will finish second. John Dowd will take the win. The one-moto format at Sacramento meant there would be no second chance for the factory stars who were left in the mud. Dowd wins it, Bale second, LaRocco, Jeanette, then Smith. Bale and LaRocco were the only factory riders to finish in the top 20. As the series headed to High Point Raceway in Mount Morris, Pennsylvania for round 3, Jean-Michel Bale was securely on top of the points leaderboard in the chase for the 1991 National 250cc title. He had 69 points ahead of Dowd, who was in second. The Privateer had 56. Then came Stanton with 47. Then Larry Brooks 44. Damon Bradshaw rounding out the top 5 with 38. With 5 rounds remaining in the 250cc National Championship Series, anything could happen. But for all of the stars, say one, Jean-Michel Bale, it would be an uphill battle. Let's check in on the action at High Point Raceway. This is moto #1. Leading the field out of the first corner, rider number 11 aboard the Yamaha is Damon Bradshaw. He's followed closely by the defending champion, rider number 1, Jeff Stanton. Then comes Jean-Michel Bale. The Frenchman would later say, I followed the guys up front, meaning Bradshaw and Stanton, to see what they would do. They were riding at such a ferocious pace, I just felt that one of them would crash and I would be able to make the pass without endangering myself. They were going very, very fast. Indeed, they were. They swapped leads. They were side by side throughout a good portion of the moto. Here, a sharp left-hand U-turn. They'll head into a series of jumps going down to the lower portion of the High Point Raceway. At this point, Stanton has taken over the #1 spot. When they emerged, though, Bradshaw had it back. The Yamaha rider was not about to be denied in moto #1. Stanton did everything he possibly could do to take the win, but it would be to no avail. Again, to the inside goes Stanton. And again, Jean-Michel Bale, as Bradshaw turned on the power and kept Stanton behind him. Jean-Michel Bale watching from the #3 position. With a huge points lead in the standings, Jean-Michel Bale was not about to risk life and limb at this point in the series. He had a championship to gain, and the results of one moto were not going to affect that title ride. Lap after lap, Stanton and Bradshaw pounded the Mount Morris Raceway. Stanton again takes over the #1 position, with Bale back in third, watching the action out front. He would stay there throughout the afternoon in moto #1. Bradshaw had to be wondering, what do I have to do to put this Honda rider away? Each time he did, each time he gained 2, maybe 3 bike lengths, Stanton would come right back, reel him in, make the pass to take over the #1 spot, shoving Bradshaw back to second. Late stages of the moto, Stanton continues to lead Damon Bradshaw. The crowd at Mount Morris Raceway were watching some of the finest motocross action ever seen. On a downhill portion of the racetrack behind the trees, it was Stanton leading as they disappeared, and Bradshaw taking over the #1 spot behind the trees. He emerges as the leader one more time in moto #1. Final stages of the moto. It's still Bradshaw being closely pursued by Stanton. Unbelievable race action in round 3 of the AMA National Championship Series. It was not until the final lap when Bradshaw finally pulled away from Stanton. You decide, did Bradshaw have something left, or did Stanton say, take the win, I'll come back in moto #2 for the overall honors of the day? Team Yamaha's Damon Bradshaw, the teenage sensation, takes the win in moto #1. Here's a look at the point standings after Mount Morris. Bale on top. He had moto finishes of 3-4. Stanton took the overall win. He's in second place now in the standings with moto finishes of 2-1. And it was Bradshaw, second overall at Mount Morris, moves into the #3 position with moto finishes of 1-2. From Pennsylvania, the series traveled west just a couple of states to Michigan and Redbud Raceway in Buchanan. It was a hot and very humid day. We're going to pick up the action in moto #1. Here they are on the starting line just prior to the start of the moto. It's Jeff Ward, #3, Matasevich, rider #7. Of course, on the line, we'll look for rider #8. That's Jean-Michel Bale. Stanton sporting the #1 plate. And the final contender of the series, rider number 11, Damon Bradshaw, teenage sensation on the Yamaha. At the start of the opening moto, Jeff Stanton took the hole shot. Behind him, the pair of riders that, along with Stanton, had provided most of the excitement throughout the season, Damon Bradshaw and Jean-Michel Bayle. Still on the opening lap, watch what happens as Bradshaw cooks it a little too hard in the corner. He gets wide. Jean-Michel Bayle goes to the inside to take over the number 2 position. At that point, on lap number 1, it was a pair of Hondas out front. Stanton followed by Bayle, then Bradshaw. For the second week in a row, motocross fans, and there were a lot of them at Redbud, were enjoying some spectacular motocross action. The opening moto at Redbud signaled the halfway point of the 1991 250cc National Championship season. It was argued that Bayle, in charge of the championship chase with a rather large points lead, did not give his all 100% of the time while racing the Outdoor National Championship Series. Well, it may or may not be, but Bayle was in contention week after week. Here again, he is following as Damon Bradshaw found a great line, not only past Bayle to take second, but swept by Jeff Stanton to take over the lead. Watch again. Here comes Bradshaw from the number 3 position. He moves to the inside of Stanton and outside of Bayle. Splits the pair of Honda riders to move into the number 1 position, and we're still on the opening lap. It's Bradshaw, Stanton, and Bayle. Stanton from nearby Sherwood, Michigan, was easily the crowd favorite. The Honda rider, defending national champ in the 250 class, had raced at Redbud on numerous occasions, both as a professional and as an amateur. He had enjoyed many winning outings as an amateur racer, but never as a professional. He was looking for his first ever home state national championship win. Bradshaw, meanwhile, was doing everything he possibly could to keep that from happening. It was Matasevich, Ward, and Mike LaRocco aboard the Suzuki, rider number 6, running in the second group of riders chasing the leaders. All of a sudden, Damon Bradshaw did not come around. On the back part of the racetrack, out of sight of the cameras, Bradshaw had fallen. He was back in the number 3 position, being pursued by Jeff Ward, rider number 3. Ward was in 4th. In 5th, it was Mike LaRocco, rider number 6, aboard the Suzuki. Meanwhile, at the head of the pack, Jean-Michel Bayle picked up the pace slightly and was putting the pressure on Stanton. Stanton responded with a handful of throttle to hold down the number 1 position. But he knew that Bayle was there. Any mistake on the part of the Michigan rider, and Bayle would move into the number 1 position. As long as Stanton was able to control that spot, as long as he kept up the pace, as long as he made no drastic mistakes, then Bayle would be content with the runner-up position. He was still after that championship. This was round 4, 3 to go, and Bayle was playing it smart. Late stages of the moto, Damon Bradshaw began to close on Jean-Michel Bayle while Jeff Stanton was rocketing away from the rest of the field. Then Mike LaRocco, rider number 6, showed signs of a malfunctioning motorcycle. He was in 5th place. Would he be able to hold the Suzuki together? Stanton took the win. Moto number 1 was his to the delight of the Redbud crowd. Let's take a look at the top 5 finishers in Moto number 1. It was Stanton, Bayle, Bradshaw, Jeff Ward in 4th. Mike LaRocco held on for 5th. Second moto, it was Damon Bradshaw, followed by Bayle, Stanton, Mike LaRocco, and Dubach. The overall win went to Damon Bradshaw, rider number 11, aboard the Yamaha. Temperatures leading up to Lake Sugar Tree had been rough. Conditions had been tough. But the heat and humidity in Axton, Virginia were the worst of the year. Moto number 1, it's Jeff Ward, rider number 3, his first hole shot and first lead of the season. Back in the pack, several riders down, none of them contenders for the title. Exiting the trees about corner number 4 at Lake Sugar Tree, it was Jeff Ward, followed by Stanton, then Matasevich. Back in the pack, just a short ways, came Jean-Michel Bayle, the series leader. And watch what is coming up for Jeff Ward. He disappeared. He was out of control. When he reappeared, he had lost his motorcycle. Ward quickly ran back to his mount, but the damage was done. Ward was uninjured, but he was out of contention in Moto number 1. Meanwhile, it was Jean-Michel Bayle, his teammate Jeff Stanton out front. Two riders had been beating up on each other throughout the opening rounds of the series. Lake Sugar Tree would be no exception. The early leader was Jeff Stanton, with Jean-Michel Bayle in tow. Bale had been taking heat up until this point for not winning, for not risking life and limb and body to take a moto win or to take an overall win. He was accused of coasting. Why not, says Jean-Michel Bale. The championship was at stake. A smart rider would do exactly what Bale had been doing throughout the year. Still, the critics were not pleased. Jean-Michel Bale responded, making the pass on Stanton and taking over the #1 spot. Bale was out for business at Lake Sugar Tree. Stanton, though, refused to give up. The defending champion in the 250cc class was not about to be denied without a struggle. The championship points race would boil down to whether or not Jean-Michel Bale suffered any kind of bad luck. Stanton was going to force the issue every inch of the way. He made the pass to regain the #1 spot. By keeping the pressure on Jean-Michel Bale, it was Stanton's hope that he would create some kind of a pressure situation that Bale would react to and experience some kind of difficulty. What Stanton needed to be a factor in the title chase was for Bale to lose points on a moto, to score no points just as Stanton had scored no points in Sacramento, California at round 2 of the series. With the opening moto at Axton drawing to a close, Bale regained the #1 position. Stanton stayed with him until the final lap when he dropped off the pace. Bale took the moto win, followed by Stanton in second. Here are the point standings after round 5. In the second moto, the checkered flag fell to Jeff Stanton. He picked up his third 250cc National Championship overall win of the season. 5 down, 2 to go. Round 6, Kenworthy's Park, Troy, Ohio. Time was running out for the field of 250cc riders. Team Honda's defending champion, Jeff Stanton from Sherwood, Michigan, had closed the gap to 10 points. With just a little help from Jean-Michel Bale, with a little good luck coming his way, he would again be a factor in the points chase for the 1991 250 title. Moto #1, let's pick up the action at Troy, Ohio. The 40-rider field thunders toward corner #1, a right-hander. Watch what happens. A massive pileup back in the pack. Involved were 2 key players, Jean-Michel Bale and Damon Bradshaw. Jean-Michel Bale was up and headed toward the mechanics area, where the Team Honda mechanics performed some minor surgery on his Honda and got Bale back into the action. Damon Bradshaw, however, would be out for the afternoon. Meanwhile, at the head of the pack, it was Larry Ward, Jeff Matasevich, and holding down the #3 position was Jeff Stanton. It would be Stanton's opportunity to gain back the points he lost in Sacramento. With one event plus one moto remaining, it appeared the championship would go down to the wire. In the early going, Stanton being cautious as he stalks the riders in front of him. He wants to make the pass. He wants to take the win. He wants to garner as many points out of Kenworthy as possible. But more than that, he wants to finish. But look what happened. All by himself, Stanton, through that rough section of whoop-de-doos, bailed off his Honda, perhaps taking it too easy. Perhaps that altered the lines that he had ridden in practice. We'll never know. In any event, Stanton was down on the ground, and he was down hard. His elbow was injured. Stanton would go on to finish. As we watch a replay, we'll see Stanton appearing from the left side. There he is. He is already off the motorcycle, hitting very, very hard. He's driven into the ground. He rolls away from the bike. He was back up and got back into the moto. He would finish 6th in moto #1. He would not start moto #2. Meanwhile, Damon Bradshaw, another injury. We told you he did not finish either moto. Here's Bradshaw holding his arm, his upper body. Bradshaw is going to pull off the track. He will garner no points in the Kenworthy round, round #5 of the 250cc National Championship Series. The Yamaha Ace had been running in the #3 position at the time, and with a break or two was close enough to strike, was close enough to overhaul Jean-Michel Bale for that points lead. It was not to be at Kenworthy. Bale, meanwhile, picking himself up back into the fray. He's at racing speeds now. Would cruise the pack and end up in moto #1 after surviving that first corner crash and a trip to the mechanics area in the #5 position. The win, though, would go to Suzuki rider from Society Hill, South Carolina, rider #10, Larry Ward. Finishing in the #2 position in the opener of 2 motos at Kenworthy would be #7. That would be Jeff Matasevich. In the #3 spot in moto #1, Doug Dubach, Yamaha rider #15. The story of Kenworthy Park, moto number 1, though, was Jeff Stanton and Jean-Michel Bayle. Bayle would end up in the number 5 position. Had Stanton been able to stay upright, had Stanton been able to win the moto, then Bayle would have been dropped back one more position to 6th. 6th place is worth 15 points. To win, you get 25. The difference of 10 points, it would have been tied going into moto number 2. Instead, in the closing moments of moto number 1, Jeff Stanton was passed by Jean-Michel Bayle. Bayle would take the number 5 position. Stanton would end up 6th. Here's a look at the leaderboard in the closing laps. Larry Ward still out front. Matasevich running in the number 2 position. That was rider number 10. That was Larry Ward. There's number 7. That's Matasevich. Running in the number 3 spot, rider number 15 is Doug Dubach aboard the Yamaha. These 3 riders are enjoying their best outing of the year. Don't forget, 3 of the top contenders are out of it in this moto. Jean-Michel Bayle currently running in the number 5 position. Jeff Stanton is injured, running back in 6th, and already pulled off the racetrack, Damon Bradshaw. Here we are on the last lap of this slick Kenworthy racetrack. Mike LaRocco, rider number 6 on the Suzuki, and Jean-Michel Bayle, JMB, the 2-time world champion, aboard the blood red Honda, rider number 8, giving chase. They would battle this way right up to the checkered flag. Bayle keeping the pressure on, LaRocco handling it with ease. Again, this is the battle for the number 4 position. LaRocco is in it. Bayle wants it. Bayle still looking for his first overall event of the season. In the back of his mind, he has to be thinking, finish strong, finish as hard as you possibly can. It could come right here, down to the wire. This battle for the number 1 spot. Larry Ward, rider number 10. Jeff Matasevich, rider number 7. That's 1-2 in the point standings. Again, we're looking at last lap action in round number 6 of the 250cc National Championship Series. Back to the battle with LaRocco and Bayle. There was action all over this racetrack throughout the moto. Bayle went wide as they head toward the checkered flag. Mike LaRocco keeps it on the inside. He takes all of the good lines. He puts Bayle out in the rough stuff to try to take advantage of any kind of a slip, and there LaRocco made one. Bayle had gone wide, tried to square off on the inside. Did he get the job done? He did side by side momentarily, but LaRocco emerged with the lead. The drive for the checkered flag, and there it is. Larry Ward takes it. Jeff Matasevich finishes in the number 2 position. There's Doug Dubach in 3rd. Here's the battle for the number 4 slot. It looks like Bayle, but LaRocco at the last second squeaks by on the inside, and he is going to hang on for 4th. What a tough fought moto. Bayle gets 5th. Outstanding action in moto number 1. The second moto was all Jean-Michel Bayle, with Jeff Matasevich taking his second place of the afternoon. That was good enough to give him overall honors for the day. Larry Ward finished 4th. He was 2nd overall. Then came Bayle in points for 3rd overall. Doug Dubach with another 3rd place finish was 4th overall. Here are the point standings after 6 rounds. Only Stanton has a mathematical run at the title. He's 36 points down. He's going to need some kind of break in the season finale to win the championship. Round 7, Southwick, Massachusetts, the final race of the 1991 250cc National Championship Series. For Jean-Michel Bayle, a 6th place finish in moto number 1 would lock up the championship. Anything in addition to 6th place was pure gravy. The field was set. They were chomping at the bit and ready to go. Jeff Stanton from the middle of the pack lined up next to Jeff Ward. Damon Bradshaw was behind that pair as the field thundered toward corner number 1. A couple of riders down, back in the pack, none of them major players for the championship series. Another crash, this one deep into the corner. Mike LaRocco, rider number 6 out of LaPorte, Indiana, aboard the Suzuki. He was up and away, but out of contention. The early lead had gone to rider number 3, Jeff Ward. Damon Bradshaw back in the woods, overhauled Ward to take over the number 1 position. The rest of the field was Jean-Michel Bayle stuck in the middle of the pack, followed. Bradshaw out front setting a blistering pace. Right behind in the number 2 spot. He quickly moved into 2nd. He had to pass Jeff Ward. To do that was Jeff Stanton, the defending champion. Stanton was still looking for maximum points. Stanton would go all the way for the win, hoping that Jean-Michel Bayle would suffer some kind of mechanical problem back in the pack. Now that's Jeff Matasevich. He's doing a little suffering of his own as he tried to pick the Kawasaki up. Forgot to pull a clutch in. And of course, the motorcycle squirted out from underneath him. Matasevich tumbling in the early going. He was all right up and at him as Mike LaRocco got back into the action. And there was the pass. Jeff Stanton with a handful of throttle through one of the roughest parts of this extremely rough racetrack. Overhauled Bradshaw, taking over the #1 position. Stanton, with 3 overall wins to his credit heading into this season finale, was looking for one more. He'll make it an even 4 to top off the year. Bradshaw with 1 overall win to his credit. Rider number 11, he too is looking for bonus money and extra points in this season finale of the 250 championship race. Final lap, Jeff Stanton is all alone out front. He'll take the checkered flag. He'll take one more overall victory on the season as he came back to win Moto #2. Jean-Michel Bayle would finish in the #4 position. All he needed was 6 to wrap up the title, so the title was his without even starting in Moto #2. Bayle would, however, finish in the runner-up position in that second moto. So Jean-Michel Bayle, the Frenchman with 2 world championships to his credit, wins his first ever U.S. national title.